Hey there, welcome to episode 168 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 5:38 a.m., true story, Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Tuesday, May 5, 2026. We normally publish new episodes on Tuesday mornings. We're right in there. Today's title and topic, some other Vegas challenges. The kind that impact our efforts to enable other challenges, if you like. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, or perhaps the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, we're actually going to get into a little bit of our history as part of this episode. Suffice to say, we are a 501c3 public charity. We're a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We formed in June of 2022. We began to reboot the old Code for Vegas. In January of that year, we incorporated as the Code for Vegas Foundation rather than rejoining Code for America, and then we renamed to the Innovate for Vegas Foundation later in 2022. Innovation can take many forms. Not everything is code, so that worked out okay. And the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program focuses on what we're working on, how we are working on it, and a variety of other things. Should we have interviews more often? Probably. We used to have interviews back in the early days. Finding people who want to talk about innovation in the civic volunteer space is always a challenge, but we're always here for you. Certainly I am. So there you go. Let's get into it a little bit. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary, which is a little bit wordier than normal. And then just the two links, as usual, our home pages. So yeah, let's get going on this lovely Tuesday morning. The summary of today's episode. These are not challenges like the Smarter Smart City Challenge, but the sorts of challenges an organization like ours, and maybe others, have to work around to get things done, to get the word out, and to get more people to reach an aha moment, lean in, and take part. Many challenges. The links, as usual, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation has two homepages. True story. The innovateforvegas.org website, Innovate FOR Vegas, .org. That's our activity homepage. That's where you'll find our initiatives, the people participating, progress towards those ends. It's kind of the day-to-day stuff. Innovateforvegas.org was our initial kind of main website for the whole thing. This was based on a migration from the codeforvegas.org website, which we still have. So Code for Vegas became innovateforvegas.org, codeforvegas.org, innovateforvegas.org. But then, don't forget, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We have bylaws. We have directors that sit on our board. We have the business side of our endeavors, the finances, tax filings, and so on. This stuff will be updated in a structured way. We do store our stuff for public consumption, making use of GitHub. GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, does provide some gratis tools for nonprofits, not necessarily charities, but we are a charity too. But they do offer, that's something you'll learn when you pursue charitable and or nonprofit endeavors. Not all nonprofits are charities, of course, and not all services that are offered to nonprofits are actually offered to non-charity nonprofits. So, but in the case of GitHub, they actually offer GitHub for nonprofits, and they actually will do that. You don't necessarily have to be a 501c3 public charity. That's not true of some other services. Google, for example. Anyway, so Innovate for Vegas, period. So same spelling, Innovate FOR Vegas, period, Foundation. So that's the business side. We are a corporation, so we have all the stuff that goes into that, but we keep it a little bit separated so that you pick which side of the coin you want to check out first. Or is it a poker chip? Never really settled on that one. Now let's get into this episode today. We'll start off with a little reminder that we have board of directors seats open. Directors on our board, seats available. We are indeed a Nevada nonprofit corporation, as I've reminded you a couple of times now. And we do have 2 empty board seats for those who might be interested in joining in this production. I myself am the managing director, not the executive director. I actually work on this foundation and our initiatives and all the other things. No executive washroom for me. And we need 2 more to make it 3. Normal directors. Not everybody's a managing director. You don't have that kind of time. We can have more. We can have more than 2 additional. But we do need to have 2 more to make it at least 3. We can have 5. We can have 8. We can have 100. But we really should have 3 or more. The quick rundown over the 4 years we have been in existence thus far since our reboot. And again, there was a Code for Vegas that was not an independent, standalone corporation, 501c3 entity. It was part of Code for America. So here's a quick rundown of our 4 fiscal years. Since we incorporated in June of 2022, our fiscal year ends at June 30th. I think it was June 16th we filed our paperwork. So June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. So this is our 4th fiscal year coming to an end, June of 2026. So we rebooted Code for Vegas with myself, one of the original co-founders of Code for Vegas, and a so-called executive director, not a managing director, from another former Code for America brigade, as Code for Vegas was. So when Code for America was sunsetting the brigade program, there were a lot of programs, cohorts of people around the United States who were now suddenly a part of a former brigade. So some of them are independent entities like us, but most of them were fiscally sponsored by Code for America. So they may or may not be actually incorporated as standalone entities. They're often fiscally sponsored by kind of a open charitable organization that acts in that capacity. So they're not individual standalone 501c3 entities. They are fiscally sponsored by a third party to accept tax deductible donations and to operate as a 501c3, but they're not necessarily standalone nonprofit corporations in their respective localities. So that's maybe a little bit more inside baseball than you want. But that was our first year. In our second year, Code for Vegas co-founder, Sean, first Sean, was getting into other things in his day job, and he actually is in another state. So one of the reasons that Code for Vegas sort of entered a hiatus mode many years ago was that the 2 co-founders departed the state of Nevada, pursuing work elsewhere. So it made conducting business here tricky, and participation was not substantial at the time. So by the end of the second year, we added on someone who had no background in the brigade system, unlike Sean 1. And to be honest, I had not had any involvement either, which figures into some of the plans that I will describe here and which I've described in previous episodes. So participation locally was fading fast. So at the end of the second year, Sean 1 departs, and we add on Sean 2. So different Sean, same spelling. So for our third year, we had now 2 people. Sean was also in Northern California, so we had 2 of our directors in Northern California, and myself here in Vegas, which left very little engagement in general here in Vegas, especially given the quickly waned interest in local innovator participation, which I will describe a little bit more in a moment. These are 2 of those challenges, local participation and local engagement with the infrastructure and, to be honest, the culture here in Greater Vegas. We are now coming to the end of our 4th fiscal year, which has been a year to reframe and relax a little bit, with the 2 Northern California board members having departed to pursue an educational nonprofit entity in California. So they're focusing on their own locality, which makes sense, and which I would like to do here with more board members, at least one more, of the two to be based locally here in the greater Vegas area, and then to conduct some outreach and engagement here in Southern Nevada. Participation from civic volunteers is an interesting challenge in other places. I've mentioned the civic volunteer winter. It's not just in Vegas. Where there are former brigades or new cohorts trying to do something similar to all of this that we are pursuing. And in more than a few cases, the same challenge exists to get civic volunteers to value their pursuits. Otherwise, maybe they're not civic volunteers. I think there is sort of quickly a notion that, I need to do something more along the lines of a traditional job and not spend my time, put it in quotes, working for free. Got a little water here. You may have heard that. So tune into the Join the Production episode, number 167. So that was the episode before this one today. And you will get more details about actually participating in the governance of our foundation. One little bit, though, as I detail in that episode, I wrote on that episode. In that episode, our directors are all volunteer. I wrote not all volunteer. Our directors are all volunteer, yes, but are not expected to be hands-on, if you will, for the actual initiatives, hackathons, and so on. So participating in our governance does not mean you have to be a software developer. Not everything is code anyway, so you're not expected to participate directly in our initiatives, component projects, events, and so on. So governance can be remote. It can be isolated to just governance, not participation otherwise. That sort of goes along with the two sides of the poker chip notion with our two websites. So kind of spreading that message across the board. What we really need is some input from people who might find civic volunteer pursuits of interest aimed at community elevation and for our org cohort collaboration. More on that in a moment. So here are the challenges we need to overcome, and you can help. How many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, and then the final section. So these are a little bit long. Get comfortable, or if you're on a treadmill, keep going. So show me what you got is the first challenge. The original Code for America plan was to work with local governments and agencies to develop products and services that would have participation from local brigade members as part of the development process so that local innovators could participate in these activities in their own communities. I'm sort of paraphrasing. We never really rejoined Code for America, so I don't know how that would have proceeded in more recent times. Code for Vegas worked with Code for America as part, I think it was before the brigade program was formalized. So I don't know if Code for Vegas was officially a brigade at the time, but essentially part of Code for America. And in collaboration with the City of Las Vegas on the Open Data Platform project that is still in use today, which I've talked about a bit in previous episodes. Why do I keep writing on previous episodes? The I and the O are too close together. On my keyboard anyway. And I will again speak of these in the future. And if you're in a Googling mood, if you search for City of Las Vegas Open Data, no quotes needed, you will find the first part of the data hosted on ArcGIS, ARCGIS, and it links to other chunks of open data from around here as well, and they're all hosted on ArcGIS. So you'll find the open government stuff, the open checkbook. You'll find the GeoCommons, which has a lot of mapped location data that is displayed as maps. And then sort of related, the LV, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, publishes their data on the same platform, ArcGIS. So ArcGIS is a third-party platform that does geographical information systems, so GIS. So they store some of this open data. Our lone champion, when we first rebooted, who worked for the City of Las Vegas, was actually around for this collaboration effort a decade or so ago. It was a little bit more than that, actually, which probably helped with the whole being our champion thing, because he knew he had some history. This is not generally true of our City of Las Vegas interlocutors. Most of the rest of the City of Las Vegas staffers are not familiar at all with civic volunteerism in this capacity and the Code for America concept, from what I can tell. Though Clark County did enter into some cannabis conviction record sealing software project with the Code for America folks, This did not include local volunteers since the brigade program was sunset after our first year sometime, so we never had any involvement in any of that. And I don't even know if it's actually still going forward. But this always led to a sort of blank stare when I met with various individuals in the city staff. Here's what we're doing. In the first year, I was doing a lot of outreach locally. This area is not bereft of volunteer organizations of various kinds, to be clear. People do charitable engagements and other nonprofit endeavors here. And we are indeed a 501c3 with all of our papers in order. Yet various people would present me with precisely this statement. We have to be careful who we get behind. I literally had that conversation with, what was it? He was the chief disruption officer at the time. He's no longer with the city. Sort of the city CTO, if you like. I said, hey, it's right in our name. We are, kind of picking up where Code for Vegas left off. And we are, doing it for Vegas, the greater Vegas area in any way, in any way. No. Anyway, he did not see it that way. And he said, well, we have to be careful who we get behind. And I heard that from more than one person. So that was a little bit frustrating. That's not really how innovation works in a place with innovation culture. I will remind you, or maybe you've never heard this before, if this is your first time listening. I spent 15 years in the Silicon Valley, the real one. From what I've seen over the years, and substantially unlike the actual Silicon Valley, where I spent more time there than I have here in Vegas, there is a need for proof of some kind to show legitimacy here in Vegas. In Silicon Valley, countless times I would attempt to pursue things in my locality, which was the city of Sunnyvale, right at the southern tip of the bay on the peninsula side. And city council, city staff, local small businesses all had the same sort of innovator mindset, which was, tell me more. Maybe we can be a part of this. Maybe we can help. Maybe we can enable in some way. So, very different attitude here in Vegas for now. So yeah, you need to show me what you got before, show me something, and we'll decide if we're going to get behind it or help it in any way. And I will say, I've seen the city of Las Vegas talk about entities and endeavors as though they are a part of these things, but in fact they are not. So I think they're just not, they don't have the innovator mindset at a government level. It's a culture thing, I think. I also don't have a halo. I was assigned a halo, when I was the only Intel employee in Nevada when I first moved to Vegas in 2013. I had just moved here from Silicon Valley way back then. At the end of the day, the strategy for working with local government, that is cities, counties, and the state in whatever capacities, as far as engagement for collaboration, is to demonstrate progress, or as I often describe it, go around and allow them opportunities to catch up. So in other words, I came here from Silicon Valley. I worked for Intel. I would travel around quite a bit. When I was in town, I was the Intel guy. So that helped me with engagement. And this is the take home, is that here in the greater Vegas area, you really need to be somebody. Oh, you work for Intel. Oh, you're offering us some Cybertrucks. Oh, you are a celebrity. You're wealthy or famous. That's much more interesting than just somebody with good ideas. We don't know what to do with good ideas. Okay, let me get off my cynicism soapbox. But it is easier here in Vegas if you are already established, if you already have something to show, if you already have some progress behind you. And that's where I propose that we proceed forward. And if they want to catch up with us, great. But there's no longer any need, from my perspective, to reach out to the city of Las Vegas, for example, to say, hey, would you like to collaborate? It's going to be much more about them coming to us at this point. And that's just a matter of practicality. We don't have government engagement staff. We don't have people taking up that mantle. Maybe we will. But for the time being, we are all startup mode. Next, is there free food? We kicked off our reboot in March of 2022. This was before we decided to move away from any re-engagement efforts with Code for America, which we were pursuing from between late January of 2022 And then June, by then we had already given up. We were forming our own independent nonprofit corporation. So we kicked off in March with what would become a monthly hackathon meetup, which we were able to host on weekends in the International Innovation Center in downtown Las Vegas, which at the time was managed by our champion to whom I referred previously, moments ago. Early on, we were also presenting a story to what was typically a room full of people, 20, 30 people. We did this for a couple of months at Tech Alley. If you know what that is, good for you. If not, probably as it sounds, Tech Alley, Tech Meetup. I mean, Alley doesn't imply meetup, but it's a multi-mode monthly meetup event purporting to cover the tech and startup scenes. I have a lot to say about that, but not today. There was a substantial disconnect between showing up for our presentation at Tech Alley or even at the monthly hackathon meetup and actually getting people to engage. So mostly people would sit in a chair, ask some questions, listen passively, and then we probably wouldn't see them again. There are three main problems we can identify directly from these experiences attempting to reach out to our local innovators of all ages during our reboot efforts early on in the first 2 years. Number one, the difference between showing up and asking questions and actually participating in ongoing projects, which we now refer to as initiatives, are not necessarily intuitively linked. It would appear that the notion of a hackathon left some thinking that these were tiny efforts to pursue for a day or two during such a gathering, which is not the case at all. Former brigade pursuits and all of our initiatives are ongoing without a particular end date in mind. So the notion of having a monthly hackathon meetup was, hey, we can focus during the hackathon on advancing our projects and initiatives. This was, even though it was explained quite plainly, that didn't really seem to connect. So, and that it actually rubbed some people the wrong way explicitly. Well, wait, these are not just why don't we just do one thing and then it can end and then we'll be done with it? And I said, that's not really how the world works. So all of our initiatives are intended to be ongoing developments where people can join in later. And if we have deployed our initiatives, right, and you may be thinking, oh, so like software, or not. So whatever our initiatives include, there will be components of it that will always be on deck to be improved, made better, brought up to speed, brought up to modernity, etc. So nothing is intended to be archived and shut down and put away. They're all intended to be ongoing engagement with our communities, our locality, and the people in it. So this approach enables participation in later phases by newcomers, continuous innovation life cycle, and opportunities to build on what we already accomplished into the next initiatives or to evolving existing initiatives. This is simply how the world functions. I've seen quite a few, especially if there were Code for America driven efforts, where once the project was considered done and delivered, that was it. But again, that's not really how the world works. So part of the development of a culture of innovation would be behaving like an actual ongoing focused effort. You may disagree. There are two questions that came up often in those early days, one a bit more obvious, I suppose, and the other not so much. So that first one, is there free food, was about snacks or meals that go along with a hackathon. And this is understandable, and my answers were one or both of, are you here for free food, or should free food be here for you? Or in order to have free food, we need to present some reason for donations to support that, which means we need to show up and make some things happen. So it's challenging, especially here in Greater Vegas, show me what you got, to convince donors. Food trucks, for example, it'd be great to have food trucks show up at our hackathons. Well, we need to have people show up at the hackathons to make it even close to reasonable to have food or donations for food to enable participation in hackathons with snacks or actual victuals, beverages included, right? So chicken and egg problem indeed. But if everyone shows up and says, well, where's the free food? And I say, well, we need to have some momentum. We need to show me what you got, right? This is Vegas. Otherwise, we have no chickens, we have no eggs, and we also didn't have people who would come back. That's another thing, which I'll get to in a moment. The other question, a little bit less obvious, why don't we just use WordPress or the equivalent? That is, why innovate when we can just use something that already exists? And while that is a healthy mindset for projects that are for profit, that have release dates, that have timelines, that have competition to be concerned about, maybe you're on a startup timeline, you're burning through money, your runway is behind you more than it is in front of you. That's a challenge. That's a real challenge. But in our case, we are not driven by release dates and venture funding. So we can actually innovate as part of a learning process, part of a skills development process, as part of that cultivation of a culture of innovation in general. So this was a little bit of a breakdown of communicating the goals of the foundation, and more fundamental perhaps, what innovation is. Integration is totally valid out in the real world. Why reinvent the wheel if I could just use one that already exists? But part of our goal is to enable people to understand how to invent a wheel. So there's a line to be drawn. Usually there's teamwork, a conversation to be had. Well, how much of this do we need to create and innovate for ourselves? And what can we use that's already out in the world? But it isn't simply, why do we have to do anything? Why don't we just use WordPress and be done? That's not the goal. It's quite simply. It's a little bit more complicated than that. The greatest challenge, though, perhaps, is getting people to show up. There is something one must possess already or eventually, already inside somewhere or eventually, that enables us to take a bit of a leap to pursue community elevating endeavors, learning a bit along the way, to improve skills we may already have or add some new ones. I have mentioned this in a recent episode of this program, that as the civic volunteer winter warms up to become a civic volunteer spring at some point, hopefully, soon, our foundation and other various efforts will do much better to capture the interests of people with more experience around volunteer efforts, so that we can develop a critical mass of people who can grasp committing to these sorts of things where others are also committing. In other words, teamwork, appreciating, respecting, and collaborating around the civic volunteer ethos. I use the couch analogy. If I say, hey, can you help me move a couch this weekend? And you say, sure, and then you don't show up, I can't move the couch. So volunteering does include the notion that others will depend on you, you may depend on others, and we have to treat that as sort of sacrosanct. The time, effort, and expertise of others is to be respected in general, and hopefully we get that in return. And this is non-trivial. So we do suffer from I think that the core of the issue is people believe we are kind of a coding class. Oh, I can learn for free. I can do some stuff. I don't have to pay for coding classes, but we're not a school. We're not an educational resource in that regard. Excuse me, a little sip of water. So having people participate who have no experience, that is totally fine. However, if we have 100% no experience and the 100% also has no interest in continuing because their needs are not being met, it may make more sense to come back later when you have a little bit more experience, or when you can be a part of a larger group of people, so that there are some with more experience, some with less. We can all learn from each other, etc. So non-trivial. And then the third one, other places. Something that I had observed early on after the sunset of the brigade program, and as I was reaching out to other brigades and then former brigades eventually via virtual meetups that are hosted all over. Meetup.com, horrible platform, but it is what it is, was that there seemed to be a common issue at hand. And this is over the last 4 years. Maybe in a post-pandemic world where fewer people were showing up to participate in community elevation efforts as part of these cohorts in various places. The cohorts were shrinking, the former brigades were shrinking, people showing up not as commonly. Not all brigades were suffering from this. It depends. Everything depends. So Hack for LA, for example, apparently has substantial turnout for their gatherings. So that's good. But in other places that have fewer people showing up or a shrinking return population, continuing the efforts, it can be a real challenge. Something I was asked early on, or something I asked early on, sorry, if there are various people attempting to pursue or continuing to pursue similar ideas in other places, and from anyone's perspective. So if you're in San Diego or Chicago or wherever, people in other places may be doing something similar, either civic tech, civic volunteerism, maybe down to the project level. Like, oh yeah, we're all working on, public transit tools. So similar ideas in other places. And we are all seeing a shortage of participants, new participants, returning participants, etc. We could not, why could we not connect our efforts in some way at a distance and maybe fill in some of those blanks, especially if there was some commonality between various projects or initiatives? This is not yet caught on, but it is how open source projects function in the real world. Famously, the Linux kernel was started with a post to Usenet by Linus Torvalds that said, hey, would you like to check out this project I'm working on? Anybody, if you want to take it and play with it, it's open source, etc. That's how big things have small beginnings. So this has not yet caught on, but it is now, it's something that we're still pursuing. It's not a crazy idea pulled out of the ether. It is an actual methodology. So there still tends to be something of a local fiefdom mindset. Maybe it's a little bit protectionist or at least siloed, but collaboration across local boundaries with other organizations is certainly possible, and I believe ultimately beneficial. So we'll see how that goes. The thing that Vegas has, which other places may or may not have to whatever degree, is our now 38 million visitors to our locality for 2025, 38.2, I think it is, million people visited. I don't know if those are 38 million unique people, but it's a lot of people. In 2024, it was over 40 million. I think it was 41. And in general, the greater Vegas area draws a lot of visitors from a variety of places, which means we have a population of potential co-creators, if you're familiar with co-creation, reviewers and testers of sorts that could try out our ideas if we can deploy them for public use in general. They can try out these ideas while they're here and maybe even head back home and perhaps, in some cases, encounter a civic volunteer organization focused on innovation in their own locality, perhaps. Maybe they will have contributed in some way to the stuff that we are building or that they are building, and we can deploy it here in Vegas. And, you may still be thinking software, but it could take any form. Software is easy. I'm kidding. Software, though, doesn't require mechanical devices, distribution of solid objects. So software from a distribution standpoint, a little bit easier, but it could take any form. Imagine a cohort of two or more, maybe a few more than two cohorts of one or more people. So we could have a cohort we'll just pick Chicago and San Diego. So we could have two cohorts in these other places, plus our cohort here in Vegas. And we could join in on something we might be working on here in Vegas. And we can all try out our ideas in this substantial crowd of visitors. There is an opportunity with the right discovery scheme in place to share ideas and effort across localities to get around these circumstances where maybe the size of a particular cohort is not what it could be. We used to have 10 people, now we have 2 people. We used to have 20 people, now we have 1 person. If we had 1 or 2 people from 2 or 3 other places to collaborate on our open transit initiative, for example, or maybe on our discovery tools, the Project ACT initiative, and that's ACT is Autonomous Cohort Tessellation. I've gone into detail about this in a previous episode or 2 or more, and we can apply that to Innovate for Nevada initiatives as well, which I've also talked about. And of course, we have our Agile for Volunteers initiative, which will ideally be an active collaboration wherever any cohort may find some utility in this approach to maximizing the time, effort, and expertise contributed by volunteers in any area. It doesn't have to be software development, so software or otherwise. And we always remind people that not everything is code. So just because you're not a coder doesn't mean you can't participate in innovation, which can take many forms from many people. So part of our initiative collection includes tools for discovery, connection, communication, and collaboration, project, we'll call it project management. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but an application of the Agile methodology to a volunteer pool civic volunteers who are not working 40-hour work weeks, not working on software necessarily, and not always returning to continue their efforts. So Agile for Volunteers makes some assumptions about recidivism, whether people will show up beyond the current iteration. So it's very iteration heavy, with the assumption that people who do complete an iteration and submit some of their effort may never return. So we've talked about this, and there'll be more to say about Agile for Volunteers as we advance that cause. Project ACT, similarly, once we get this up and running for Innovate for Nevada and our own efforts, Innovate for Vegas, and then anyone else who'd like to jump in on this, we can actually help connect people with a opt-in discovery mechanism based on technologies that have been around for decades, rather than relying on a top-level organization like Code for America or similar, relying on them to manage some spreadsheet or database somewhere. And that's usually how it has worked. It has not been leveraging the availability of technology today, in my opinion. All right, have a little water again. So yeah, innovation. This is another take home in general. Innovation, aside, Code for America, Code for Vegas, Code for Philly, Code for San Diego, Hack for LA, Hack for other places. So Hack for, Code for, these all imply software development. The world is a little bit more interesting than that. So Greater Vegas has an innovator marketing mindset. We have the Innovation District. Other places have innovation districts. I believe Henderson is working on their innovation district. Clark County is working on an innovation district. We're making the Greater Vegas area, Clark County area, a global innovation hub has been mentioned. But the culture that goes behind that, the people here, the mindset about pursuing innovation collaboratively, sometimes taking advantage of the resources we have here, rather than telling people what to do, you enable them to do the things that they think will make more sense. So you enable innovation. Innovation can take many forms, and it can be conducted by many types of people. Types being interest areas, experience levels, and so on. Not what you were thinking. So I may have, and I do have 30 plus years in a software engineering, computer engineering sector of the world, but I may also be interested in language translation or accessibility, physical accessibility, mechanical accessibility. These are not software issues. They're different. So in some ways I have tons of experience. In other ways I have very little, but a desire to learn more. So innovation can take many forms, and you don't necessarily have to be broadly experienced in one particular area that would prevent you from becoming experienced in other areas. So this is a mindset adjustment. It will take a while. It has taken a while so far. Last section. Thanks for hanging on. So we're about to enter year 5. This fourth fiscal year has been a slow one, to be sure. If Greater Vegas really does intend to live up to the notion that it is a global innovation hub, it makes sense to make innovation a part of the mindset in a variety of ways. Cultivating a culture of innovation is one of the items high on our to-do list, to be sure. The Smarter Smart City Challenge is an approach we will take to surface some of the ideas people have all around Greater Vegas, maybe beyond, and easing the discovery process within Nevada and beyond as well, between cohorts of people as formal organizations or less formal groups and clubs or even individuals, to connect intent, effort, and goals across boundaries to make less recreation of effort and more progress through awareness, at least. So this is a sort of the same idea as connecting civic volunteer and civic tech organizations around the country who may have a shortage of participating individuals, but who can collaborate across regions and across similar projects. So if we have 10 cohorts, just making up a number, and we all need some things in common, like engagement with open data platforms, derivation of particular pieces of data from geographical information systems, implementation of mapping of some pieces of data in a standardized way, so GIS in general. So some places there may be 1 or 2 people that have more experience or more access to people with experience in the application of geographical information systems and the data they produce. and other places may not have that. So can we collaborate across localities for the things we have in common that we need to accomplish for our particular locality-oriented goals? I will point out it's not uncommon for former brigades and now, civic tech volunteer groups and organizations around the country to focus their efforts on the needs of their local communities. And so there's a certain amount of reticence to believe, oh, yes, we should work with you on your problems. That's usually that's the initial reaction. But in fact, we could work together across 10 cohorts or however many to say, well, here are the things that we all have in common that we need to work on. So we can discuss strategy, or what have you accomplished and what have we accomplished, and how can we, make the most of those things and advance the cause in the common areas. And you can still work on the particularities, the intricacies of the specifics that you need for your locality. But we can at least try to, come to some sort of a collaboration benefit on the common stuff. And this is how open source works in general, right? Hey, if I can publish a standard library of tools, open source software, or open source hardware, if I can publish a schematic or some parts lists and other people can benefit from this, they can build on top of what I've already accomplished. Maybe what they build can benefit me, and that will be some sort of a return on the investment of time I made in publishing the work I already did. So it's a circle of life, perhaps, opportunities to learn and collaborate at a distance and so on. Sadly, we could probably write off interactions with the city of Las Vegas proper at this point. Despite our namesake, Innovate for Vegas, Code for Vegas before that, and the actual interactions with the city of Las Vegas in the original Code for Vegas capacity, there is a fundamental disconnect which seems to arise from the tendency to favor resources and familiarity first, wealth and celebrity, in the area of innovation. That is, our top 3 goals are to elevate community through innovation, to develop job skills and perhaps life skills in the volunteers who contribute their time, effort, and expertise towards those goals, and to cultivate an overall culture of innovation in the Greater Vegas locality. And it would appear that CLV, City of Las Vegas, believes innovation is something that is an economic concern, i.e. a revenue generator first and foremost, and even then a focus on entrepreneurial innovation is somewhat weak. So established entities, and this is something I've talked about in the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program that I publish on Fridays, but that's a separate thing. But yeah, there is interest, but it appears to be leaning more towards established businesses and companies and how they will impact the economic diversity efforts of the Greater Vegas area, as opposed to properly, if I can use that word, enabling entrepreneurial innovation. And that's something that we are focusing on, where the goals of our entrepreneurial innovation are community elevation and job skills development and so on. This is a sort of, there has to be a connection between the aha moment. Like, oh, you want to volunteer to make our communities better through innovation? Because we really want a startup scene that will help create startups and a startup momentum so that we can be the next Silicon Valley, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's this monetization goal as part of the economic diversity efforts that are ongoing that doesn't take into account it's a different business model. So the show me what you got mode doesn't lend itself to kind of early adoption, as would have been the case if there were people who were familiar with what Code for Vegas and Code for America were attempting to accomplish here, and then what comes next with an independent organization as we are today. So, some outreach and education might work. This is a job for more than one person. So whether this is completely pervasive across Southern Nevada and maybe the entire state remains to be seen, but it appears to be an area of concern that requires some convincing rather than a leap of faith on the part of our government folks in the city of Las Vegas. So maybe city of Henderson, maybe city of Boulder City, maybe city of North Las Vegas, maybe moving a little bit farther away, Clark County, and it's 2.4 million people. Surely there are some people in different areas of government or government-related or non-government organizations and agencies that get it. Maybe they have some experience with other civic tech, civic volunteer organizations that are pursuing innovation in other places, when that is a possibility. Final point, final section, final point. We have made it. Does this audio program play a role in our overall timeline moving forward? Maybe. Discussion might be a more effective way to present ideas here than the monologue, which I've been publishing weekly for some time. Discovery here is also a problem when it comes to media productions such as this. So discovery is a pervasive problem in Greater Vegas. That's more than just me saying that. The silo problem is real. LinkedIn is not ideal for any of our discovery hurdles. I think I may have mentioned this once or twice per day. So whether this audio program or other engagement and outreach tools might work or work better it's not really properly tested just yet. Our local press does not, just like City of Las Vegas government staff and similar, doesn't quite know what to do with a civic volunteer organization. So press engagement, getting the word out through our existing local traditional legacy media has been an uphill climb. Once again, show us what you got. I personally believe we can do better here. And in so doing, engage a larger fraction of the population of Greater Vegas who might possess that certain something. And then we can find out whether they want to apply that certain something in Greater Vegas for Greater Vegas and then beyond. And I will, as we come to an end of today's episode, and I thank you for listening, I will remind you, listener, if you've never heard this before, we do have it's not a new idea either. We have a path to monetizing, spinning off, splitting out, arm's length operation. So the open source initiatives that we develop on a volunteer basis can very easily become the beginnings of startups that we would spin off. And the people that have volunteered their time can then be the founding members of these startups that we could spin off. Again, not a new idea. Totally doable, but we do need to have participation to get there. I can only found so many startups by myself, and it will take a long time. So, as I always tell people, I don't want you to work for free. I don't want to work for free necessarily, but I want you to be willing to work for free, as I have been doing for a long time now. Because when you invest yourself in the sorts of things that we're trying to accomplish, and then we can actually deploy them, and maybe they're software, maybe they're hardware, maybe it's documentation or physical devices, or it could be anything. Once we start making progress and making things go, whatever they are, if we can spin those out, we can engage our communities here locally, we can engage communities in other places, monetize things, and turn our efforts into actual financial interests, making money for the people who have done this work. So something to think about perhaps. But yeah, there are some existing challenges that we really need to tackle. And I'm one to sort of say, well, if you're not interested, then we'll just keep going without you. And that's my attitude with City of Las Vegas. I've tried many times, and I don't have the time or cycles. I don't have the space in my day to try to convince people that if they want to be an innovation hub, they should embrace innovation and not the show me what you got mindset up front. The Hollywood 2.0, some other notions, they do require a certain amount of a leap of faith of sorts. And Hollywood 2.0 seems unlikely anytime soon. 3 times didn't make it through the state assembly, the state legislature, for tax incentives and other benefits for studios and so on to create business here in the Southern Nevada area. So it's time to move on from that for now. And that's unfortunate because the attitude is generally, well, without having big corporate interests here, we can't really pursue the whole notion. And well, that may be the case. That is not necessarily the case with innovation, which can take many forms. So a global innovation hub should do just that, embrace innovation of many forms, in many forms. You never know where the next idea is going to come from. And if the filter is show us what you got first, well, maybe we'll do that somewhere else. So we'll see. We'll see what unfolds. But a certain amount of independence and entrepreneurialism would help. And so that's what we have so far. We can use more of it. So if you're thinking about participating in the Innovate for Vegas Foundation and its efforts, or if you find Smarter Smart City Challenge interesting and so on, don't forget we do have our weekly office hours, except for today. I have a schedule conflict for later today, but we normally have them on Tuesdays. But do check our website for more information about the details of the schedule. And we are putting together the Smarter Smart City Challenge. Right now we have monthly meetups for that, and one of them will be tomorrow, first Wednesday of the month, each month, until 2027 when we kick it off. So there you go. That's where we are so far. There are real challenges. There's something to be said about climbing the mountain and getting over those challenges. Take care. Thanks for listening. Be well.